How about House of the Dragon? I thought it was great, a really strong start to the series. They did what they needed to do in that first episode. One thing that kind of surprised me was the tone. It was darker and more foreboding than I had expected. And this is a real direct contrast to Game of Thrones, where even in some of the more serious episodes, they tended to interject lighter moments. That wasn't really the case here. There was a joke at the King's Council from Daemon to Otto Hightower, but even that was a very grim scene with what was going on. The casting, I think, is excellent. Coming into the series, I had one concern, and that was Matt Smith in the role as Daemon. And it's not because I didn't think he wasn't a good actor. I just didn't feel like he was a fit for this particular part. Then a couple weeks ago, during the premiere, a select audience had seen that. And the reviews that came out of it raved about his performance. And some people even said that he was the standout in the episode. So my low expectations got raised quite a bit coming into the episode. And I was pleased when I saw it. I can't say I was wowed like some of those people that said, whoa, he's the standout in the show. But I thought he's convincing as Daemon. And that's all that we need. It's a critical role, and we need someone in that part that's going to deliver. And I'm confident now that Matt Smith was. He was great. Another incredible performance was Paddy Considine as Viserys. There was so much going on there with this character. And getting right to it, it was that birth scene. Very difficult to watch. Grueling, brutal. And they kind of took a little bit of the anguish out of it by jumping back and forth between the scenes from the tourney, which were actually violent too, and was a perfect fit for this. But what stood out to me is that the Maester told Viserys that they had two choices. Either they were both going to die, or they could possibly save the baby. So, naturally, he wants to still try and save the baby, but the problem here is he never told Emma, his wife. And that really makes you hate this character. It does for me, anyway. Her last moments are just in sheer terror. She doesn't know what's going on. He hasn't told her. I mean, she might have even just given consent, knowing that she's going to die anyway. Sure, try and save the baby. But she's delusional, losing blood, doesn't know what they're doing to her, and she's being held down. It was horrific. And that centers us a lot on Viserys and how it's going to impact his relationship with Rhaenyra, which I'll get to in a little bit, which I think is really interesting in the story going forward. Millie Alcock, great as the young Rhaenyra. Really sold the role, and I thought that she's was a good fit. They did another good job here. The first scene, too, with her was well chosen, I thought, with her on her dragon Cyrax flying down through King's Landing. It brings back some of the feels of the original, the good feels, not the ending, but the familiarity. But yet something different. People aren't shocked to see someone on Dragonback. She's flying through the city, and it's the height of the Targaryen reign, which brought home by she lands in the dragon pit. The last time that we had seen that, it was a dilapidated structure. But here, it's full of life. And one of the interesting scenes, in my previous video, I had mentioned that one thing that I was really positive about the success of this series was that they were putting a lot of attention to detail on the dragons. And that showed up here too with Cyrax. We saw two in this episode. We saw Caraxes, Daemon's dragon, and then here, Cyrax, who is Rhaenyra's dragon. And she, at this point, it was funny because just the personality as they're herding her back to go down under, she doesn't want to go inside. It was just like you could see the reluctance that she didn't want to go down there. So I thought that was interesting that jumped out. I thought that was really well done. Another little thing as far as details. Rhaenyra and Alicent here are shown as friends. We didn't have that in Fire and Blood. So that is going to, I think, just further enhance the show. There's many gray areas here, too. You have to understand with those people that didn't read Fire and Blood. There's a strong outline and we know where the story is leading, but there's a lot of areas where they can fill in the blanks, which makes it really intriguing for those of us that did read the books and what direction they're going to go. Because Fire and Blood reads like a history. It's not a straight novel like A Song of Ice and Fire, the series there. So this is just the way the Maester and then other observers had seen it through their eyes during that period. And we all know how history can be. It can be just impacted, of course, by the person telling the story and not necessarily the facts. So here, Rhaenyra and Alicent are both friends. Nice change. And Rhaenyra, too, going back to my point about Viserys and what had happened with her mother and how he left her to die. You could see the resentment at her funeral. It took Daemon to prod her to go forward, to have her dragon come down and complete the ritual. He was pointing out to her that he needs you now. But Rhaenyra here is being seen really, she's seeing what it's like in this world for women. It's being brought home to her with what happened to her mother. And that I think is going to be a key point going forward here in the story. And that's going to really impact Rhaenyra's decisions moving forward too. This early conditioning and how she's seeing the world and how Westeros views and values women. Let's talk about Otto Hightower a little bit. That key scene at the council, which I mentioned earlier, where Daemon cracked that joke about Otto's wife. This showed something really in the whole dynamic of some of the key people. At the time, Corlys, who was more of a background character here, Corlys Velaryon, he was discussing with the council the problems that they were having in the Stepstones with the Triarchy. And this is going to come into play in the episodes that follow. And Ser Otto switched the topic to the tourney that was coming up. It was something that Viserys wanted to latch onto, and he would rather discuss that. Corlys seemed disgusted. Remember, that was the point where he put his hand over the cup when Rhaenyra was coming around with the wine. He was just didn't want to have any of it. He's a more serious, direct character, and he's not impressed by the way that Viserys is handling this, and certainly not Otto Hightower, and neither is Daemon. And that brings us to the scene, another key scene, the one inside the throne room. And Daemon at this point straight out told his brother, the problem is that you're weak. And what really did it for me with this scene was all the visuals actually proved Daemon's point. Viserys didn't sit his brother down and discuss the issues that he had with him. Instead, he brings him into the throne room, puts on his crown, and is surrounded by the king's guard. It was almost as if he needed everything that was around him, all the trappings of his position, to just absorb the strength from that to confront his brother. And in the end, I think that Daemon is right. He offers to become his hand. I know some people believe, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, that Daemon just wants the crown for himself. And they're leading you to that point with him at the one scene with Rhaenyra sitting on the Iron Throne. But I feel at the crux of it, what Daemon really wants is just the respect and consideration from his brother, which he feels that he deserves and hasn't gotten through the years. Here he's just saying, hey, let me work with you. Sort of playing the bad cop role to Viserys, who doesn't seem to have that same steel. I mean, this is the actual counterbalance that Viserys really needs. And instead, he's being shifted by Otto Hightower, who's a snake, who sends his own daughter into his chambers after he lost his newborn son and his wife. Manipulative, sort of like the little finger of the series. And Viserys, with such poor judgment and lack of intuition, is siding with Otto Hightower over his own brother, who he sees as a threat. So it brings home, I feel, that whole weakness. And I think that's how they're going to paint Viserys in the series. In the books, he's more of just like somebody that had a peaceful period, but then also just was more of like the party guy type of thing. So, and that's why at that council, he was so drawn to Otto's talk about the tourney and moved away from the important discussion that Corlys was discussing about the stepstones. Finally, I want to talk about Viserys' decision to make Rhaenyra heir. And that scene brought up the one thing in the episode that I had a small problem with, and that was when he mentioned to her that Aegon the Conqueror had a dream, or he had a vision that there would be a great winter that could potentially destroy man, and that a Targaryen would have to be on the throne. This isn't in the books. So it's something that the writers are inserting in here. And my problem with it at this stage, I feel, is that it provides the tie-in that they're looking for with the original series, Game of Thrones. In my opinion, though, I think that they should have a bit more separation because of the poor way that the show ended. It's not a reminder that I think people really want after the disappointment of how the Long Night ended and the Night King was killed. If maybe they had brought this in a few episodes down the road, I might have felt a little different about it. I don't know. I'll have to see how it plays out. It's not a game changer for me. I thought, like I said, I thought it was a great episode, but I just was kind of taken aback by that moment. And again, maybe if they had done it later in the series, it wouldn't have had the same impact for me. It was just up front. It made it seem, give it a lot more significance, because that's what we're seeing in this episode. Themes and important points that are going to play out in the story. I like the way they ended the episode too, with Rhaenyra being named heir and everyone coming up and pledging their allegiance to her, some a little bit reluctantly. And at the same time, there's Daemon leaving King's Landing on Caraxes' his dragon. Nice cut scenes there. Thought it was well done. And I had talked earlier about that sense of foreboding, and you could feel it in that last scene too. Even Millie Alcock, I think, expressed it too on her face. And like I said, I think she's doing a great job. It's supposed to be a younger role here. The actress, I believe, is 22, which is great. It's just sometimes we get children actors, it doesn't quite work out. And I think she looks younger and is a good fit for the role. She's really has the presence for this important part. So those are the main points for me in the episode. What would I give it on a scale of 1 to 10? I think I would give it a strong 8. I thought it was a great start. They did what they needed to do. They put forward the themes, the difficulty in this world for women, and particularly a woman ruler. Viserys' reluctance to trust his family and how that might impact his own daughter's ascension to the throne. Because I feel if he had taken up Daemon on his offer, it would be a lot easier with somebody with his strength to make sure that it came about at the time needed. So again, great episode. I think might do another one soon about the ratings. I think that's another interesting thing to look at before the next episode on Sunday. And that's about it for now. See you in the next video.